Okay, my name is Ron. I'm the owner of Mobile Fix Automotive. I'd like to welcome you to this edition of what I found dealing with a P1351 code on a 1998 Silverado. It's basically a C1500. It's got a 5.7 in it, and which is the V8. This is the kind of the early model Vortec engine. This is the one that's got the spider injectors inside the intake manifold. This truck has been a customer of mine for well over 13 years. The owner that owns it is a friend of mine. He bought this truck brand new in 1998. So he's the original owner. So it's great because I have tons of positive feedback on what's been done, what hasn't been done. But for the last 13 years, I've been the primary tech on the truck, except for smogs, alignments, and things I don't do in my facility. But all the mechanical's pretty much been done. You might actually recognize the color. This truck has been in a couple of my videos for how-tos. So on this 1351, this thing has been kind of a royal pain in my butt. When a 1351 code ends up being what we consider occasional, to say the least, it makes it very difficult, especially for somebody like me that's an owner-operator. I do not have employees here at the shop. So when I get overwhelmed with work and a vehicle comes in that the diagnostic takes a long time to figure out, it can literally make me pull my hair out. So to give you a heads up on what the problem was with this vehicle, if you have on your vehicle and you're searching for 1351 code failures and you have either a complete no start or the vehicle shut off while you were driving, this video is probably not going to pertain to you. So if you've got an issue where the 1351 code is keeping you from starting altogether, but your engine's cranking over fine, which means your starter's spinning, then you probably want to move on and not waste your time on this unless you're just in it for the entertainment factor. After 3 months of pulling my hair out with this vehicle, what I ended up finding out, and I'm not going to tell you exactly what the problem is till a little bit later here, because I want to let everybody know what it was doing. So this particular truck, for a very long time, and in the last 3 months it's gotten progressively worse. It starts just fine more often than not, but every 15 to 20 key cycles, which is a start, it would crank extremely slow, almost like the timing was too far advanced. So instead of it going, it would just go kind of go, and it wouldn't start. Then you'd turn the key again and it would be fine and the engine would start up. The only thing is, and it would run fine, but you'd have check engine light with a 1351, P1351. So in my world, I use a system for my diagnostic. My primary system is from Mitchell On Demand. That's the system I use, and most of the professional technicians across the country use that. There's a couple of people that run all data, stuff like that. Mitchell's my primary. So Mitchell has a diagnostic procedure for this that's extremely long. And it starts out with you, for those of you that have seen the list, you disconnect the electrical wiring for the fuel injection system at the top of the manifold, you crank for 30 seconds, and then if the 1351 code's there, you move on, etc., etc. Everything on that test, which took well over an hour and a half to do multiple times, came up negative every time. Every time I thought I had the problem fixed, the customer would get the truck back, and then a day later he'd call me and say, guess what, check engine light's back on again, same code. So the last time this truck was in here was a couple of weeks ago, and it happened to be in here for me doing an update on his rear differential. He wanted me to put a limited slip in the back and change the gear ratio from a 354 to a 373. The only reason that's important information is that was the last time I looked at this particular problem, and while it was in here and it was cranking slow, I did a starter test on it, and the starter test on my electric meter passed. So I did a battery test and the battery failed. It showed it being less than 30% reserve capacity, and it had no draw on the system prior to that, so it should have been charged up for the most part. So I went ahead and put a battery in it. And I told him, I said, pretty good chance that's what it was, because now it's starting way stronger. And I drove it that day to lunch, all over town, did all my errands in it, and it never missed a beat. When he picked it up that day, first key cycle, I actually heard it out my window when he started it, and it went whoa, 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 and nothing. Then the next key cycle fired right up. I saw the look on his face, and he's never been unhappy about it. It's just he'd like to get the problem fixed. Well, today it's in here, and that's all it's in here for. And I finally figured it out. And I finally figured it out with the help of another guy on YouTube. Now, sometimes I search YouTube, but it's not my primary. And I'll watch 5 or 10 different videos, and I take, and because I'm professional, I know who sounds like they're crackpots and who sounds like they know what they're doing. And although this gentleman had a very heavy accent, and a lot of that has to do with me having bad hearing, which is why I'm yelling at the camera, because I can't hear myself talk. He actually pointed me in the right direction. Ended up being stupidly simple, but unfortunately the item, being the starter, passed every starter test I put it through. And so I want to give a kudo to this guy. His screen name is Joel Automotive in Action, is what it's showing up as. And I think he was doing a 97 Chevy pickup truck. And it took until 10 minutes into his video, I had to keep fast forwarding because all of his data, by the way, he's got some great diagnostic tools. He's definitely, at least knows what he's doing. Very few home mechanics own that type of software. So he's probably like me, where he's been in it a while and put some money into his diagnostic equipment. But right about the 10.5 minute mark, he talks about his getting a voltage drop in his scanner. And it made me go back out and do a different type of check on the truck. And what I ended up doing was I said, you know what, I'm gonna go back to something that Ford came up with. Yeah, Ford, not Chevy. That I remember back in, I believe it was the 70s or 80s, and it was called replace with known good part, which means take a part you know works, put it in, and if it fixes the problem, that's what the problem is. And all the electronic tests that I had done on this just kept showing nothing wrong. And it was such an intermittent issue that it was just making me pull my hair out. So I ordered a starter, a good quality remanufactured starter for it. I put it in this morning. This truck has been here all day, and it is cranking at twice the RPMs it was cranking before. And it's showing almost the same data on my electronic starter tool, or it's actually a battery starter tester, continuity tester. So I'm gonna probably send that thing back out to the company that I bought it from and have it recalibrated, because I'm thinking it's probably the issue. But what it turned out to be was it turned out to be a bad starter. And what was happening, thanks to Joel kind of tipping me into that direction, because I had been looking at ignition control modules, cap, rotor, wires, plugs, fuel pressure, all these, I mean, just everything that everybody keeps throwing out there. And what ended up being the problem is when you were in the crank position, there's a point on the starter inside on the electric motor where if it came to a stop in a certain part, it would short out when you went to go start it, and that's where that slow cranking would come from. So by replacing it with a starter that worked, it was able to get me to not have that dead spot anymore, which has pretty much fixed the problem. And I have no doubt in my mind that we're done. The 1351 code's not going to return. So if you guys are looking at a 1351 code with an intermittent slow crank on the older Chevy Vortex engines, I would strongly recommend looking at your starter and possibly just changing it. I'm not really one for throwing parts at a vehicle unless we know for sure, but some of these older ones, you know, diagnostic software doesn't always pick it up. So I'm hoping this helps somebody. I'm sure I'll get some interesting feedback from some people on this, but my goal is to share with the general public and pay back the knowledge that I've received over the years. And if this video helps just one person, then it was well worth me taking, you know, 10 or 15 minutes to shoot it. Unfortunately, I'm not going to do a video on how to take the starter out and put it back in. There's tons of those out there, and you know, although people like the way I do my step-by-steps, it's just too time-consuming for me on this one. So I want to thank you for watching. Hopefully this helps you. And remember, if you didn't catch it at the beginning of the video, if your 1351 code is not allowing your vehicle to start at all, or it shut off while it was driving, this is a starter's probably not going to fix the problem. This was a problem with an intermittent slow crank followed by immediate check engine light coming on. So, all right, thanks guys. Like and subscribe to me. You know, I'm trying to do the best I can for you, and we'll see you on the next video. Thanks.